Do you support Donald Trump?
Absolutely.
Why so?
Because I associate with his agenda, his ideology, the things that he kind of, wants to do. Some things I like, some things I don't, but the majority of what he does I like.
Like what?
Secure borders. I'm okay with the tariffs. I basically like a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. Basically, the restructuring of every three-letter agency in our federal government. I think it's long overdue, and I think it's a step in the right direction.
Just because there's restructuring doesn't mean the restructuring is good. So you'd have to be clear specifically on what the restructuring is. Secondly, in terms of securing the borders, I'm assuming you're saying that's through mass deportation.
Well, no, mass deportation, but part of it, I mean, actually securing the borders to the lowest numbers we've seen in 3 decades, with crossings and encounters. I think that's a big part of it.
I actually think it's a bad thing that there are less people come to the country. I think mass deportation is a bad thing as well. So I think both those things are bad. I guess I would ask you, can you name one way in which mass deportation benefits our society?
Yeah, it's basically I want to argue whether it benefits or doesn't. I think it's a radical way for a hard reset. Like we have an immigration problem. Neither party wants to solve it. Neither party has solved it. I think it's just his way of kind of signaling to his base and just again like an extreme hard reset on what he's trying to do.
So can you name one way it benefits our society?
Yes, it gets people that shouldn't be here out of our country.
That isn't, how does it benefit our country to do that?
So yeah, so it bets a lot of things. So say, for instance, you have 1,000 people taking up housing. Well, now there's 1,000 vacancies in housing. Say you have 1,000 students that are using local tax money for schools. Those students are no longer here, so now you have all that money that's returned. It's kind of a trickle down effect from top to bottom. Schooling, housing, you name it.
So you also know that there's less people who are paying into the systems. Undocumented immigrants, for example, paid $100 billion in taxes in 2022. There's less people
Yeah,
demanding goods and services in the economy. There's less people building houses. There's less people who are working at grocery stores. There are less people working in general because you'd engaged in mass deportation.
yeah, so from that same report where you guys get that $100 billion paid in, if you actually go a few pages ahead, it goes to the overall cost on US taxpayers, and it's over $150 billion. So yes, they bring in $100 billion in revenue. Again, that very report where you got that number from, a few pages ahead gives you the overall cost, and it's over 150 billion.
I didn't get it from the Fair Report. That's a far right think tank. I don't get my sources from far right think tanks.
Fantastic. So then what's the cost on the US taxpayer for illegal immigration? What's that burden on a yearly basis?
Well, I don't think federal. It would be a state and local. I don't think federal governments specifically provide anything for undocumented immigrants.
Well, yeah, that's fine. I'm not being
I have a
descriptive
question.
between
Do
federal
you
and
think
state. It,
legal?
it
Do you
doesn't
think
matter. It's still a
I have a
it's still a
question?
burden on taxpayers.
I have a question. Do you think legal
Yeah, sure.
immigrants are a burden on taxpayers?
No, not at all.
So then why don't you just provide mass amnesty for any undocumented immigrant who hasn't committed a violent crime or bad crime? Because you agree that they wouldn't be any type of drain in our system.
Yeah, and I'd agree with parts of that. I have there's
That's
it's a
amnesty, not deportation.
slippery slope for me. No, again, I some things I agree with, some things I don't. I don't think we should just grant everyone status. I think again, I kind of up and down on the topic, but I'm okay with mass deportation.
Okay, but mass amnesty does everything that you would want without actually like deporting people from the country. It benefits our economy as well. And you also said like one of the ailments of undocumented immigration, one of the things that you consider it bad for, is because you specifically think that like they're a drain on our system. One, that's not true, and two, even if you did believe that to be the case, they still wouldn't be a drain on our system because it is the case that we could provide a pathway to citizenship for anyone who's in the country undocumented who hasn't committed a violent crime or bad crime, which would then make them legal immigrants. So they
Well,
wouldn't have
again, I
that
mean,
drain on the system.
they are during the system. I mean, I can give you an example from the literal town I live in. So, I mean, for you to say that, it's just not a factually accurate statement.
No, it is. It is completely and totally factually accurate because you're also not taking into account
Well,
the
no,
federal
it's
revenues that
it's
you're
not
getting
though.
specifically through the context of the tax structure because of increased immigration.
Yeah, but again, you're making the distinction between federal and state money, and the biggest issue is the state level, which is where it impacts people the most. So it starts at the federal level at our border, and then as these people are distributed around the country, it then becomes a local and state issue, which is the main issue.
So then, if it's a local and state issue, then you want less states' rights, more federal control.
Well, no, I think there needs to be more of a working together on this issue. And again, so not on policy, just on his EOs, he's drastically affected this issue in a positive way by securing the
Wait, so
border.
if a state wants to help out people, all right, should they have the right to do that?
If they want to, yeah, that's their right. I don't agree with
Okay,
it, but
okay. Then
it's
what
their
was your
right.
issue with it? States' rights, right?
Again, I'm saying I think there needs to be a better harmony between the federal and state on this issue. I mean, it is an issue.
Okay, but like you're not telling me what the solution would be.
Again, I don't have a clear solution. I think there's a lot of things that could be done. Again, parts of amnesty I would agree with, parts of deportation I agree with. I'm not like a cut and dry person on this thing. I think both sides need to work together and do a better job. But unfortunately, the reality is it's just it's a ball that gets kicked back and forth every election cycle, and nothing ever gets done. So that's the reality of it.
So then here's my question. In terms of deportation, again, explain to me what circumstances in which you would apply deportation.
So again, as far as what he's doing, it's not necessarily I don't agree with. If you're in this, if you're here illegally, right, you're not a documented citizen, you don't have, you haven't, you have no legal right to be here. I don't think you should be here. I think you have the right to be deported. I don't think that the asylum laws should be used the same way as kind of the Trojan horse to this immigration thing. I don't think
Ridiculous.
asylum
Can I ask
seeking
you a
is the way to
question?
come into this country.
So you think
How's it
anyone
ridiculous?
undocumented, you think anyone undocumented should be deported, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So a child that's in the country undocumented, they should be deported?
Well, we have laws in place with their parents. So again, the parent, whether they came here or without, they put their child in danger by illegally crossing into another country.
So
I mean,
so then
so
like
at
let me give you
first,
an
step
example.
one was the fault of the parent.
So like let me give you an example. A kid is in this country. We don't know who their parents are. We don't know where they're from. Where do you deport them?
Yeah, so in that case, I would not support deporting a child. If you have a child that has no parents, no, I don't support that
Why not?
because they're a child. You just said, right? So if we know nothing about them, how
So
do
we
we know
shouldn't
where to
deport.
send them?
So we shouldn't deport any children, and you shouldn't deport people
Children,
to a
no.
country, and you shouldn't deport people to a country they've never been, right?
Well, no, I don't agree with that either. If a
So
country, if
then
you're
the
trying to
Trump
deport
administration
someone,
deporting people to countries they've never been before, is that an issue?
yeah. So if you're here illegally and your country isn't willing to take you back, what are we supposed to do with them? The U.S. taxpayer is just supposed to keep them here and pay for them to be taken care of? No. If you have a country willing to take them, yeah, absolutely. I have no problem with them being
If they
sent back.
haven't committed a violent crime or bad crime, I believe they should be able to stay in the country. I believe they should be able to be
And that's fine.
citizens.
That's where our opinions differ. I don't. You say they have to commit violent crime. I think that the crime of them being here illegally, crossing into our country illegally, is enough for them to be removed.
Wait, but like, okay, so if you think that like someone should not be allowed into the country if they commit a misdemeanor, then you shouldn't believe that someone who's committed a felony should be allowed to go into the Oval Office and be president.
Well, no, there's those are two different things. Crime does matter, and what crime it is actually matters, right? So if you're going to say that all
Exactly.
crime is the same, that's not a logical thing to
Oh,
say.
that's actually what you were
So you
arguing.
no, it's not at all
So
because
then
they're
we
totally
shouldn't treat
different.
all
They're
crime the
totally
same.
different
So then
situations.
we should give zero punishment for this crime. We should not enforce that if it's the case that they haven't committed a
No,
violent crime
no.
or bad
Again, you're
crime.
no. Again, no. You're trying to conflate two totally different situations that
Yeah,
have
the
nothing to do
felonies
with
are
each other,
worse.
right?
The felonies are
Well,
worse.
no. Well, no. I mean, I don't consider them worse. No, not at all.
That's nuts.
How is it not?
Falsifying
So
business records with a predicate
yeah.
crime
So
is definitely
so yeah.
worse. Is definitely worse than coming to the country
Yes. So
undocumented.
so no, no, crossing an international border into a country illegally, I think is far worse than up some documents or doing some shady paperwork.
Purposefully hiding information to affect your election prospects.
Yeah, again, that's not the reality of what it does.
That
Mind
is
the fact that
exactly
they
the
were all,
reality.
yeah, minus the facts list. If we want to talk about it, they were all misdemeanors that were then upgraded to felonies
Because of the
because of the
predicate
AG
crime.
of New York.
No,
Yeah, which
because
no
of the
one has
no,
ever
not
been
because of
charged
the
before in the
AG,
history of court ever.
not because of the AG, because of
Well,
the predicate
it was.
crime,
No, it
and that's
was.
made
No,
up.
it was.
You said this is the only
No,
time it's
it's
been
not made
tried.
up.
That's not true. What's your
Single
source?
misdemeanors, single
What's your
misdemeanors
source?
clumped together and upgraded
What's
to
your source?
felonies.
What's your source that it's never been tried before?
Again, there's people more smarter than me that do this stuff for a living that have
What's your source?
documented and talked about it on TV. So again, I
Yeah,
don't
and
have it
I
off
do
the
this
top of
for a
my head.
living, and I'm a lot smarter than you. So then, do you accept what I say? That didn't happen.
Fantastic. You want a cookie or?
Well, I just said I meet the same set of criteria that you said.
Well, again, you're arguing our
I'm
opinions
on
though.
people's
So
TV right now. Currently, if I'm on your TV right now, type 3 in the comment section.
yeah, you're arguing opinion. So again, I'm clearly stating I don't think crimes of paperwork are the same as crossing an international border illegally. I mean, so you could have your opinion, I have mine. It's fine.
Yeah, again, felonies are worse.
Again, that's fine. The status of the felony and what the felony is doesn't make a difference to me. Again, it's a felony based on paperwork, not crossing an international border illegally. I mean, there's always going to be a drastic distinction in my mind between those two things. It's like saying, is there a difference between jaywalking and schmurder? There's a big difference between jaywalking and schmurder. So again, when we're talking
Exactly.
about
Like,
illegally crossing international
wait. I
borders
have a question.
and
I have a question.
doing
Why is
paperwork,
jaywalking
that's a
not bad?
drastic difference
Why is jaywalking not bad?
because it's just you're crossing a street.
That's exactly what happens when someone comes to the country undocumented.
Well, no, because you're missing the point. It's an international border. It's not just a street, right? There's a difference, right? A sovereign nation, the border of a sovereign nation that you're crossing illegally under the crime of, punishment of crime. That's a big difference between being in a country where you live and you're a citizen and just randomly crossing across the street. Those are
Yeah,
two drastically different
if
situations
yeah, yeah,
that you're trying to classify together just because they're a misdemeanor. It's not
yeah,
the same thing.
if you think about the law rather than specifically looking at the actions they engaged in, right? Because it's not like someone's personal property.
Yes, it's a sovereign nation, the United States of
That's
America.
not personal property.
A country is defined by its borders.
But that's
Right?
not personal
International borders
property.
are a thing.
That's not
I'm
personal
not saying
property.
it. I'm not saying it is. It's a nation that you're crossing
Yeah,
into illegally.
I'm
You're
not
breaking
disputing.
federal and international laws by
but
crossing into a
again,
country.
what's bad about that? What harm does that cause?
It could cause all kinds of harm. The fact again, right? You're committing a crime by illegally crossing an international
And
border.
what harm does that cause?
It could cause many harm. That person we just saw, the person down in Florida, illegally here and just unalived three people with the license he
Yeah,
was given in California
yeah,
based on
and
Democrat
yeah,
policy.
yeah.
So
So
a person
specific.
that shouldn't be here just unalived three people with a license they should have never had in the first place, given to them by a Democrat state like California. So
What I'm in,
that's the outcome. That's the outcome right there. That's what could happen.
One, I would want to source for that too. Undocumented immigrants commit lower rates of violent crime and property crime in the country comparative to natural born U.S. citizens. So the idea that undocumented immigrants are bringing crime to the country to a greater extent is ridiculous. If you're going to say the nominal level of crime increases, well, the same thing is true for tourism, yet you don't want to ban tourism.
Yeah, okay, so here's that's that. I love when you guys bring this up. So yes, of course, the citizens of a country are going to commit more crime in a drastic amount disproportionately to people who are not in the country. So you guys keep bringing up that argument and it's nonsense. Yes, the citizens of Mexico are going to commit more crime than people not from Mexico. The citizens of, I mean, Spain are going to commit more crime than the citizens not of Spain. The citizens of America are going to commit drastically more crime than non-citizens. Like that's a non-factor. It's a play on words and statistics that doesn't really mean anything. Yes, if you're in a country of 350 million Americans, if you have 10 million illegal migrants, yes, even if every single one of them committed a crime, you're still going to have drastically less impact in crime statistics than those American citizens. That's such a nonsense point to bring up.
These are crime
No,
rates.
no,
These are crime rates. They take into account
exactly.
population. It's not nominal level of
Again,
crime.
it
It's
doesn't
crime
matter though.
rates.
And no one's yes,
These are per capita.
no one's saying that they're the overall percentage of crime. No one's ever said that.
Wait. I said per capita, and then you said, oh, it is the case that there's a greater population of people who are in the country legally versus people who are in the country. Can I please speak? Can I please speak? You said that there's a greater percentage of the population specifically that is in the country legally versus in the country who are not in the country legally, and it is the case that you said that that was the reason as to why there was a greater nominal level of crime specifically for people who are in the country legally versus people who are not in the country legally. And all I said specifically is that the crime rates that I was comparing are per capita crime rates that take into account population. So as per person, there's a lower likelihood that they would commit violent crime and property crime in the United States comparative to natural born U.S. citizens. Again, if they're undocumented.
Yes, of
They're
course.
in
And
the
again, it
country.
doesn't matter. Yes, it doesn't matter what specifics you want to use for your data. It's always going to be the same. The citizens of the country are always going to commit more crime in every single percentile than people that aren't citizens of the country.
Why is that?
because there's a drastic difference between population and numbers. If you have 350 million compared to 10 million, that's not,
These are per capita rates. They're
it's
taking
not
into
even,
account population.
yes, again, it doesn't matter if it's per capita. You're still going to have more for US citizens because they make up the overwhelming majority of the population.
This guy's an idiot. I said it's taking into account per capita. It means it divides by population, and if you divide by population, then and population can't
Yes,
have an effect on the
you're
results.
gonna have lower numbers. If you're going per capita from a smaller source of numbers, you're gonna have lower numbers.
No, because it's as percentage of the population. If you take into account population, then population couldn't be the reason as to why there's
Yes, and
more crime.
you're going off the population of a small amount of people that are illegal, whatever you want to call it.
Undocumented.
So of course those whatever you want to say, undocumented, it's always going to be a smaller number.
But they commit a lower percentage of crime, accounting for population.
Yes, that's always going to be the result.
Okay, so then why would you act like they're causing more crime?
I never said that. I never stated that.
Well, yeah, you were.
You
You
asked
were.
me, you no, you know, your question to me was what harm does it do if they cross the country illegally? I just gave you a specific example. I said that's the result. You then said that, well, they don't, your whole statistic thing. That wasn't my claim. I didn't say they cause more crime. I didn't say that the majority of crime. You asked me what is the problem with it, and I gave you the result of that problem and why it's a problem.
The reason why it's not a harm specifically of just coming to the country undocumented is
Well,
the same
did it
reason.
harm those three people that were just unalive though? Because you're saying it's not harmful. I think those three people would argue with you because they're not alive right now.
Well, people just coming to the country undocumented is not the cause of that. It's the specific
Well,
people that
see,
you're
now you're
referencing.
moving the goalpost.
Am I able to finish speaking without you
You
cutting
are
me off?
well, no, because that's both moving the goalpost right there. You're
I'm not.
pivoting
I'm
away
not
from
even
what you
able to
actually
speak.
said. Well, you're trying to because no, I already know where you're trying to go. You're saying, oh, well, the actual action of them crossing an imaginary border doesn't hurt anybody. Yes, if you're in the middle of a desert and you cross a border, you're not hurting anyone. What hurts people is what they do after they cross that border, like the example I just gave you. So for you to say there's no harm, no foul, it's nonsense.
Okay. Can I speak without interruption?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so just the action of coming into the country undocumented doesn't specifically cause this. It would be the certain people coming that specifically cause that to happen. And I'm not saying in those circumstances where people have committed violent crimes and bad crimes that they shouldn't be deported and that these laws shouldn't apply to them. I don't think that they should be allowed in the country. If someone was held civilly liable, woman, they should not be allowed into our country. But the point that I'm making with this is that just coming into the country undocumented is not a harm. Now, let me explain exactly another example as to why this is the case. For example, tourists coming to the country. Do you think tourism is a harm?
No, I don't.
But tourists, in some circumstances, have people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then, like, why wouldn't you apply the same thing to tourism in the same connotation that you blamed undocumented immigration?
Because again, you're comparing apples to oranges. You're comparing two completely different situations.
That's obviously in a comparison you compare two different things.
Yes, but you're not on the same level here. You're comparing people that come here for vacations and tourism and go back and they commit crimes. You're to people who are illegally crossing a border to knowingly stay here. Those are two different situations.
That's not a relevant difference
It's
in terms of what I was comparing because the basis of my comparison was that there was crime that comes to the country and happens in the country because people are able to come to the country through the context of tourism, but you don't blame tourism, you blame the specific individuals that did that. The same way that you shouldn't blame undocumented immigrants, you should blame the person who did it.